Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, today represents a new era in the House. It's a solemn moment, and we celebrate many of the same things that you celebrate. It's a little hard for me to remember that the last time all of us were in here, we were celebrating the end of an era wearing fake mustaches. Ever since then, I've been afraid that someday my great-grandchildren would run across a picture of that and no explanation for why we were doing it. Madam Speaker, we all appreciate the effort that you've taken so far to visit so many people. The number of miles that you put on were amazing, and I've had a huge number of calls from people telling me how much they appreciated that, and I'm sure that you've heard that too, but I want everyone else to understand that there is a lot of appreciation, and there always is in this chamber. One thing that I don't appreciate is that you stole about half my speech, so I'm making up some of this too. But it was a nice thing to see that in many ways we think the same things. I was going to point out how much we do have in common. But I think instead I will thank your parents. I'm so glad that you're here. These are clearly amazing people who gave you that solid rural upbringing that a lot of us have enjoyed too. And I don't think anyone here would deny that people on both sides of this aisle, this sometimes divide, care a great deal about the institution. I imagine that as you stand up there, you understand that you're a part of history now in a way that very few people will ever enjoy. And my guess is that at the same time, you're filled with a sense of reverence for this building, the people that built it, the people that fill it now, and even more importantly, the dreams of all of those people. We know that this building is full of good feelings often. It's also full of dispute often. And it's supposed to be like that. This is a place where you talk about conflict. And at its best, it's a place where you help resolve conflict. And Madam Speaker, one of the things that I really appreciate that you recently said is you talk about how your job is to listen. And Madam Speaker, we're the minority. That means that we don't get to win a lot of things. Our number one job is to speak and debate. And we can help you do your job, and you can help us do our job when you and all of your colleagues are the best possible listeners. We had some moments of serious conflict last session, and it got very heated. Some might say that it got ugly. I learned quite a bit from that. In fact, I had a series of long conversations with one of the people that felt the greatest sense of conflict. And when I asked that person to explain so that I could understand why they expressed themselves the way they did, the answer that I got was, because I need them to listen. Madam Speaker, sometimes it may seem like we are just up here pontificating because we're frustrated, but and maybe sometimes I know that I feel that way too. So that's a possibility. But down deep, we, both sides, the 97, normally 98 people in this building feel a deep sense of responsibility to the 130,000 some odd people that we represent. And, you know, America, the state of Washington, it has never been a winner-take-all system. In fact, I think the reason that it has lasted so long is because people understand that it's not a winner-take-all system. One of the things that concerns me the most, and because it concerns the minority, it should concern the majority as well, is that we're seeing incidents across the country where I think there has been the sense that elections matter, so we're going to implement our whole agenda. We saw that in Oregon last year, and the process broke down at one point. I hope we never go through an experience like they had. There are many that think that that is going to happen in the state of Virginia soon. Let's not get there. The way that we avoid that, Madam Speaker, is for us in the minority to express ourselves without reservation, but understanding that the process has value too, and that the rules matter. And what I would like your side to do, Madam Speaker, is to understand that it's our job to speak. And these serious conflicts that we have sometimes come from frustration, but other times they come because we have the sense that either we're not being allowed to express the things that are important to us, and we may even feel like the rules are being unfairly used against us, or we get the sense that somehow we have to create more controversy because people are not listening to us. So let's both sides get better at that. In that vein, I'll share with you some of the things that we're going to be most concerned about this year. First of all, we believe that people that live in the state of Washington have a right to be safe. And many people feel like their ability to be safe has declined over time. Some of this involves homelessness. And it used to be that we thought that homelessness was a big city problem only. And you probably didn't see as much concern as there should have been across the whole spectrum. But now, especially you, as you've been in every single corner of the state in the last few months, know that, unfortunately, it's a problem that brings us all together. We see the tragedy of homelessness and all the other tragedies that surround it in the biggest cities, where we always thought it always was, and the smallest towns. And Madam Speaker, it's been fun going around to do the press circuit with you because we both get to show some of our cards, not all of them. But one of the things that you said the other day that I appreciate more than I can tell you is that it's not just about a roof over your head. It's all these other things. You and I came into the legislature at exactly the same time. I remember being the only freshman on what we called Ways and Means then, at a time of budget crisis, long hearings, people in trouble, and people needing the help of the state and not being able to get it. And what I took away from that, I've never forgotten. As you probably know, I had kind of a sheltered life. We worked hard, but we saw life on the farm, not life everywhere else. And for the first time, I saw people who had somehow become disconnected from their family, their community, and their faith. And there are people that are perfectly functional when that happens. But life is much harder when it is. And I interpret what you've said today and what you said the other day as one of our jobs is not just to figure out how to get a roof over people's heads, but it's to reconnect them with their families and their communities. And although we can't establish a faith for people, we can certainly make it easier for faith of all kinds to flourish. And we would love to join you with that. We also want to join you in supporting our law enforcement community. It's hard to be a cop. It's hard to be any kind of law enforcement officer. And we're absolutely right to have the highest possible standards for people that have that kind of responsibility. But at the same time, it's absolutely critical that we help people that do that hard job understand that we support them, that we appreciate them. And we understand that they've got faults. We want them to get better, but we know that we don't have a civil society unless they understand that they can do their jobs effectively and well. And when it comes to safety, we know that we've got a wildfire problem, and we really want to solve that. Madam Speaker, you lined out a number of policies that we've worked on in the past and that we'll work on in the future. Probably we want to work on just about the same ones, but at the same time, we don't want to break things. And affordability is a broad term for something that I think the legislature often breaks. Sometimes it's across the whole economy. Sometimes it is in an individual sector. And you mentioned child care. One of my greatest regrets in the 9 years that I've been here has been the fact that I think through policy, sometimes passed here, sometimes passed by the voters, we've really broken that system. And instead of having better availability and affordability of child care over the 9 years that you and I have been here, it's gotten worse. It's one of the most common complaints that people write to us about. And it's a lot more than a complaint, too. It affects lives and families. And Madam Speaker, when we create solutions, a lot of times we create excess costs. And thank goodness we've got a strong economy. Washington State has a uniquely strong economy. Wages are going up. But at the same time, we hear over and over and over from people that they can't afford the things that they used to. So as we think about the great things that we've got to give them, let's think hard about, let's not break what we're trying to fix, and let's not create a system where it's impossible to afford the thing that we're trying to fix as well. And when we get into housing in particular, Madam Speaker, let's try to de-escalate the ideology. I thought that we had some tragedy last year when we did housing. You know, there was a report that came out recently that said there was a shortage of 255,000 housing units over the last 15 years. The private sector used to produce housing in abundant quantities. I know my parents built the house that I live in for almost nothing in today's terms. And to reproduce that now is out of reach for many people. So let's not just try to provide public housing. Let's try to fix the regulatory and the tax and the cost system so that the private sector can do their part when it comes to housing. And lastly, Madam Speaker, we need to work on government accountability. There's two areas that I think are critical. First of all, I thought it was good to hear, after all of the struggle we've had, that this body and all four corners have decided that the public does have a right to know. And we're going to figure out how to work with the Public Records Act, just like every other level of government is doing. And we've all got a lot to learn, and we're going to do that. The other reform issue that I really hope you'll work with us on is the idea of title-only bills. And I've heard you say we don't really have that here, and that's probably strictly true. But, Madam Speaker, we can address this ourselves by really trying hard to make sure that we're not surprising people, that the groups and the public that are affected by any bill really gets a chance to evaluate those things, come down here, do their citizens' duty, lobby themselves, and help us make the very best possible decisions. Madam Speaker, these 60 days have great promise. We've had a huge transition in authority in this building. As you've noted before, over the last 18 months, 3 of the 4 corners have changed leadership. And oddly, it was all people that came in here together. That's something that means a lot to me. Let's go forward and really create an example that people can take joy in and have faith in. We're going to fight just as hard as we possibly can for the things that we believe in. Nobody sent us here to give up. At the same time, we're going to do it respectfully. Madam Speaker, I am quite sure that you have all the capacity in the world to make sure that we get a chance to conduct that debate, to present our ideas, and that you and all of your caucus are going to listen carefully too. Thank you, Madam Speaker.